Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's breakfast briefing. Today, we're going to talk about EUPATI. And to do so, I'm very happy to introduce you to Matthew May, EUPATI coordinator. How are you doing, Matthew?
Good morning, Elena. I'm very good, thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us today. The goal of our breakfast briefing today is to understand more about EUPATI, what does it mean and how does it work, and understand how patients can benefit from this program, as well as how the patient community and the whole healthcare sector can benefit from it. Before we dive into today's topic, I kindly remind you that breakfast briefings are an interactive format. So if you want to send us a question or a comment during this direct live, you can send your question to bb@eupatient.eu. You will see also appearing the email at the bottom of your screen.
And I might even answer the question.
We'll see about that. Yeah, I'm sure about that. If you won't be able to follow us live this morning, you will be able to watch this video recorded on our YouTube channel later on. This is enough for our housekeeping rules this morning, and we can get started with the question. First things first, let's get rid of acronyms. What EUPATI stands for?
So EUPATI is the European Patients Organization. Oh, sorry, let's try that again. I work for the European Patients Forum. We are the European Patients Academy on Therapeutic Innovation. Mm-hmm. The acronym came from one of these Innovative Medicines Initiative projects that was funded under the Framework Program 7. And that's why we have an acronym just like every other project. It is very catchy now. I mean, we are known by EUPATI rather than by the European Patients Academy, which is a shame sometimes because we are the only Patients Academy, or have been the only Patients Academy, not just in Europe, but also providing information on a global level for a very long time now.
For how long, actually?
So the project itself started in 2012, and we had a 5-year project under the Innovative Medicines Initiative framework, and we came out of that at the beginning of 2017 in February. And from then we've actually continued and we transitioned to a permanent program that's actually hosted by us here at the European Patients Forum, but continuing on with a consortium of almost all the original partners. A couple of new ones have joined as well. So we could still continue to work under the public-private partnership that is foundational to all IMI projects.
Excellent, thank you. You briefly mentioned it, but a bit more information about the EUPATI mission?
So yeah, the EUPATI mission, as many people might know, is that there is not always a lot of information out there, especially information targeted specifically for the patient community, that's accessible, that explains how the whole medicines development process works. And so back in 2012, or should we say earlier because of the lead time for these projects, the consortium they got together is a mixture of patient organizations, academia, so a couple of universities. We had NGOs in there who are all active in particularly the teaching area of the healthcare sector, and the pharmaceutical industry wanted to put out a source of credible information on medicines R&D, so medicines research and development, and specifically targeted at giving people a step that they could use, foundation of knowledge, to be able to be more engaged in the research and development process, particularly with pharmaceutical industry, but also with the regulatory authorities, whether that's on the European level with the European Medicines Agency or with the national competent authorities in each different country.
So I think that translated information in a more understandable language was a big piece.
That was a big piece that we hope we've achieved it. It's always challenging when you're coming down from the core science level to something that is more understandable. We've done our best. We might not have done it completely perfectly, but I'd say given the usage we've seen of particularly the EUPATI toolbox, which is one of our 3 core products, over the past few years, we can definitely say that it's useful to a great many people around the world.
And this is very interesting. How so a little bit more on the process itself. Like, did you have patients revising the content that was on the website before being published, or how did you manage to find more or less the
perfect balance, so
exactly.
to speak? Well, it wasn't necessarily the patients revising, I should probably say. So the way that we set up this particular public-private partnership was really one of co-creation and collaboration. And so what we ensured was that whenever any stakeholder created a piece of content, and they created that content usually not out of desk research but out of personal experience, it would be reviewed by someone from a different stakeholder. And in so we tried to then balance out to make sure that we were reflecting all viewpoints of all stakeholders and really focusing on the facts rather than on an opinion of how something works. And so we did have a number of patients reviewing content written by industry or academia, but equally when the patients were the experts, we had that content reviewed by academia, by the NGOs and by industry, always in this two-way process. And we also actually went to great lengths to set up our own editorial board over the course of the project, which was a 5-strong board that represented all of the stakeholder groups in the project, plus also the regulatory viewpoint. And they were the final decision body on all content. That was actually also chaired by someone from an NGO in a quasi more neutral political perspective. So we always made sure that we came to a decision that was reflective of all the stakeholders.
So you mentioned the fantastic word stakeholders several times. So can you tell us a bit more? You mentioned briefly, but a bit more in detail who really were, who are the stakeholders very active in?
Who are the stakeholders? I really hope you're not going to ask me to list all 30 of our partners off by heart, because I might manage it, but I don't want to fear actually possibly forgetting someone, and that would be very sad because everyone played a huge role in making EUPATI a success. The core groups that we had represented within EUPATI were pharmaceutical industry under the Pharmaceutical Federation for Industry Associations, so FPA, in Europe. We also had the academia represented by a couple of universities. We had NGOs, so NGOs that were working particularly within education or communication within different parts of the medicines R&D. So we had people who were active on the more pharmacoeconomic area or HTA, people who were active within the clinical developments area, some people who do more overarching training. And so they brought in very different viewpoints, but were very extremely experienced training providers or knowledge exchange providers. And then of course we had patient organizations, particularly the European umbrellas from some of the strongest areas of advocacy in Europe.
And actually the EUPATI toolbox is available for everyone, right? It's on the website, and
yeah, so the core part of, I guess, one of our big aims over the course of the project was to be able to provide neutral information that was accessible by everyone. We all know the frustration of when we go and do desk research and want to look up scientific and hit a paywall as soon as we start looking in scientific literature. So we wanted to make sure that our content was available for everyone, and also we recognized the importance of having reuse of that content, and so actually chose to release everything under a Creative Commons license that allows for reuse on a non-commercial basis by everyone around the world. So anyone can come and take content from EUPATI and reuse it within their own training or within their own information on their own websites or publications, etc. And so that was mainly important for our big product. Was a toolbox that contains about 3,000 content pieces over the course of, at the time, the project 7 languages. Now we're up to 9. 13 will be a number that we're talking about within the next 12 to 18 months as well. And that's slowly now spreading not just from within Europe, but also to non-European countries and languages, which is very exciting. And for all of the intensity that we focused on that, because that's really the public tool that we push out. And we also have our patient expert training course, which is huge, which is intense, which is 14 months long, but provides specifically now patient advocates with a complete foundation of training, as we say, the A to Z of medicines R&D, to ensure that they are able to step into engagement roles all the way along the value chain and life cycle of a medicinal product development.
And regarding this specific course, which is one of the other pillars of EUPATI, how does it work in practice for patients? What are the requirements, how the engagements and so on, and how much time really and resources required?
Yeah, time is the big part there, and it's not a light commitment, but it is so rewarding and so valuable. And so far we've had about 150 people graduate from the course. We've run it 3 times since it was initiated. We probably launched the first one in about 2013. And we'll be launching the next one soon, though I know we'll want to talk a little bit about that afterwards, tell people how they can potentially get involved in that. The classes each time are selected from patients that have come from across Europe or the European region. We're talking very much WHO Europe rather than EU Europe. So we do have a huge diversity in the people applying. And we're looking for people who already have a little bit of experience themselves in advocacy but are looking for the next step in terms of scientific content, to be able to become expert patients, to really deep dive into some of the scientific processes that are involved in medicines R&D. And so we actually have a huge selection process for this. As you might imagine, there is a great desire to attend our course, and I wouldn't say put off anyone by saying there's a huge number of applicants. There are a few applicants. It's still better chances of getting into EUPATI than university though, so it's a good reason to join us. And we'll be examining this application form that people submit, and they tell us about what they've previously done, what their interests are, where they come from, and also how they're going to use the knowledge. So that's a big thing that we want to do, is to try and support all the different communities across Europe. And so we also try to create a balance between each class, between languages spoken, between countries that people come from, or regions of a country that people come from, and also the different illness areas and therapeutic areas across all realms of patient organizations, to make sure that we can also find a nice dynamic within the group, but also make sure we can start training patient experts. Our goal is to, on the short term, which really is going to take us medium term, is to have a patient expert in every disease area that can support the rest of the community in their work.
Because actually, once you graduated, what happened? I mean,
once you graduate, I mean, anything can happen.
Sure.
I mean, really anything can happen. We've had some of our graduates go and work with regulatory authorities. We've seen people sit in scientific advice boards. We've seen people sit in safety boards. We've seen people setting up community advisory boards, which is a nice mechanism for community groups to go and work with industry in, I guess, a version of scientific advice, but then with the patient community. Within clinical development, within defining what research goes on, the list goes on and on. And I'd say if you look at the roadmap to patient involvement that was published in 2015, actually by some members of the consortium at Young Geisler Lab, if you look at that diagram, we can probably find a graduate for every role identified along that roadmap already. And it's only been 4 years since we had the first graduates coming out of EUPATI.
so yeah, it's great success.
Absolutely huge, absolutely huge.
Do you feel the burden?
No,
No.
the pressure.
The pressure.
There's a lot to live up to, and there's also a lot more that we can do. So it's also very exciting. It keeps us striving every day.
That's great. Moving more on a curiosity, just because this is so big, it's been so time intensive and so on, and how everything has been possible, how EUPATI was financed and is currently financed.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the EUPATI was set up by the Innovative Medicines Initiative. Under IMI, the projects are financed 50% by money that's coming from the European Union, and 50% of the resources that can be cash and in-kind contributions comes from the pharmaceutical industry. And this was also reflected in our project, but the actual use of resources then happened across all consortium members. As we ended the IMI phase, so for us, as I said, that was the end of January, so from February onwards, 2017, we transitioned into, we actually took the IMI model. We loved the IMI model. It worked for us really well. It really demonstrated that this idea of public-private partnership was really the right melting pot to bring together patient organizations, industry, academia into a safe space, this non-competitive space where they could work together. And so we've continued to finance ourselves along those lines, except we've now transitioned to a point where the public funding, what used to come from the European Union, now is actually contributed in kind by all of the partners who would have been classified as public under the IMI definition. So those are the likes of the NGOs, the patient organizations, the universities are often giving us time in kind of members of staff to contribute, or hardware resources, access to facilities, access to information. And the pharmaceutical industry continue to contribute, sometimes in cash, but also in kind, to make sure that we are working in a partnership and not just a funded project. And so that really is key of how we were able to do the work that we do.
Yeah. Looking on EUPATI website, actually, I came across the EUPATI national platform that you haven't mentioned yet. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Sure.
So I'll just mention, I mean, the three outputs that we really focus on now as part of the EUPATI program. We're in this phase now since 2017. One I mentioned was the course, hugely valuable, and we keep that running. As I say, it does take 15 months long, so it does continue to evolve. We have the toolbox, now in 9 languages, And very proudly now, since September, we hit our 1 millionth user, which is a huge success. I mean, we originally aimed for 100,000 users over a 5-year project, and now we're seeing more than 100,000 users per month. And it's all organic growth, and it's just a tribute to how good EUPATI is and how valuable other people see it as, to be able to tell their friends about it, tell their colleagues about it, and use it as a useful resource. And the other point we set up were the national platforms. And so since we saw EUPATI working so successfully on a European level, this idea of the public-private partnership, the objectives of having a space where we provide neutral information to train predominantly the patient community on how to do patient engagement, or how to do effective patient engagement by giving them the necessary scientific knowledge, we tried to model that in different countries on a national level. So we started setting up national EUPATIs. So an ENP, or EUPATI National Platform, replicates the public-private partnership, but in the context of a country. Because we also have to recognize that when we do training on a European level, for some of the general areas, that's perfectly good. And especially when you're interacting with European entities and European systems, it's perfect. But as soon as you want to operate on a national level, there are all of the different granularities that each nation has for their own legal system, for their own development system, and for their own political system that you need to get to know. And so it was an important way that we could translate this European idea onto a national level. And we now see active, something like 19 countries, but also a growing interest, and so development is happening definitely into sort of 23 plus national platforms at the moment, including now a couple coming outside of Europe, which is very exciting, who've seen what we've done, particularly from the global nature of conferencing and that type of thing within the pharmaceutical health sector, and have spoken to us and are now trying to adapt this European model that worked so well for us here into areas in Brazil, into Japan, into Canada and beyond.
Thank you, Matthew. So I think by now people started to get really excited about this, like, I want to join, what's next? And getting back to the course, one of the pillars, do you have any news for us on how would be the next possibility for people to apply?
I do have some news. We're going to announce the date before Christmas, be a little Christmas present, but it will just be the date announcement. But I can also secretly tell you it's going to be March 2019. It's going to be the launch of the applications, and I mean basically the beginning of March, but final information will be coming out just before Christmas, and so that starts our next application cycle, and so people will typically have 6 to 8 weeks, that sort of time frame, to fill out their application form for us. And that means that we'll be starting the next course come July 2019. So that'll be the kickoff there.
That's exciting. And how can people keep updated with what's happening with EUPATI, and of course around March, understanding when?
Well, of course. So I mean, one way, obviously, follow EPF as one of our consortium partners. EPF propagates all of our information. If you want to get it directly from us, ignore EPF and come straight to the real source of the information. And I'm sure Julien, the comms manager of EPF, is rolling over in his grave with what I've just said, but sorry, Julien.
Probably not live anymore.
No, he's probably switched off that live button on us. But basically, people can sign up for our newsletter on our website, and I understand our website is not always the easiest to use, but just keep scrolling down and you will see the box that allows you to sign up for the newsletter. We're also very active on Facebook and also Twitter, so that's also ways that we can find it out, and we'll push it through all of those channels, and all of our consortium members will make it possible as well. So you'll see it repropagated around the internet, firstly as a sort of a save the date before Christmas, then with the full information coming at the end of February on how to actually go through the application process.
Keep an eye.
So do keep an eye. We look forward to hear from everyone. It's going to be very exciting. Cannot wait to see the next group of EUPATI trainees. So
before concluding this interview, we have a question from the audience.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yes. So first of all, they're saying that this is very interesting, and thank you for participating. So would it be an idea to get the EUPATI degree recognized on an official degree by some higher education institutions? Could it be integrated in health professionals' education curriculum? Could it become a MOOC?
So, not an easy question at all. I will attempt to summarize where we are. It's not something that is completely new to us. We've explored the idea extensively over the past 6 years. Our current position is that we won't do that. It's a fairly intrinsic area, to be honest. And the difficulty actually comes where EUPATI is positioned. It's very much like a continual professional development type of course. And there is no recognition across countries in Europe for continual professional development training. And there's also no recognition, and it's not that there's no recognition, there is no acceptance. So recognition of the degree or of the certificate that you receive in a formal way. Also between different branches of professions. And so you typically see continual professional development or CPD training required for professions where you register, so nurses, doctors, that type of thing. And you require a certain number of credits to stay registered. And so this idea of having a credit-bearing certificate is only then valid for that specific profession. So we would actually have to go through the process of not just registering the EUPATI course once, but registering it in each country with each different profession. And so we'd be looking at sort of 200, 300, 400 different professional institutions where we'd have to register it by each time paying. And each time going through the standards that are required there. That being said, we made sure when we set up the EUPATI course that we looked up what the standards of the Bologna Agreement were for education. That's obviously a level at university, not a level for diplomas or even for training. And although there's some alignment of what Bologna does on a master's level and beyond, it's focused mainly on the bachelor level, from what we understand. And so we've made sure that we have corresponded to each of those quality requirements that Bologna sets out and made sure we designed our course to correspond to it. So there is no recognition on an academic level, but from everything we've seen and also speaking to many universities, it's also not possible at the current state of play. That being said, we have access to our academic partners as part of the consortium, and it's an area we continue to keep our eye on and to see how it evolves. And effectively, as soon as someone solves the transferability within Europe, we'll be jumping on that bandwagon and making sure that EUPATI can receive that as well. But currently, we really focus on the quality of training we provide and also the recognition that it actually receives within the healthcare sector that has been generated by the EUPATI name actually standing for something of quality through the good work that all of our trainees do, through the good work that our consortium does, and also by the roles that even people in the regulatory authorities have played in actually setting up EUPATI. So it's recognized, and no one's had a problem yet. People graduate and they've been able to use their certificate to get the recognition they deserve.
And about the MOOC, a possibility to make it a MOOC?
Well, effectively it is already partially a MOOC. The course itself takes place predominantly online. That being said, we really recognize the value of being able to meet face-to-face, and not just for the perspective of face-to-face networking. We run intense practical sessions that simulate some of the work that you would do in a scientific environment. We simulate things like ethics committees. We actually have people going through protocols together, and we've attempted to simulate some of that online, and we've not been able to replicate the same intensity of work, the same learning experience. And so we've kept it as this blended learning. And whilst we keep it as a blended learning, obviously a MOOC is out of the question. And so instead we actually have the toolbox, which provides the mass access to information. And with it growing daily, effectively, what we have in terms of our audience, I think we're really addressing the mass online part of MOOC. So you
found the right recipe for the moment?
For now. Obviously there could be opportunities in the future to really develop something more dedicated to MOOC, but I'd say it's also very rare to see a MOOC of the size of a 15-month course online. When you're talking about sort of 260 hours worth of training, most MOOCs are more in the let's do it over a couple of weeks or a couple of months, not over a year and a bit.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of keeping the engagement for a long time.
Engagement is a huge challenge when it's purely online driven, and that's another advantage of obviously our face-to-face components. It really is a boost of motivation, but also a chance for consolidation of learning and to also interact with the experts that we bring in to run those sessions and ask some burning questions that maybe you weren't necessarily sure about, or you can actually speak to them and talk through your own personal situation for your own community, with how that they can help you and how you can apply the knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. Matthew, we are going towards the end of this interview. Do you have any final message for our audience?
Make sure you apply in March.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next group.
Sign up to the newsletter.
Sign up to the newsletter always, but also if you want to take EUPATI to your country, get in touch with us. We're happy to help. And also if you think there's some content that we've missed, because we're trying to always grow that toolbox. We probably won't grow the course anymore because it's already 15 months, but we want to also put out information in that toolbox. So if you see any content that's missing there, do submit it. I think we've got an email address at content@eupati.eu that you can email and ask for new content. And also if you have content that you think other people can benefit from, please submit it. And it's particularly a message for other IMI projects out there who develop new content that you can also help the community as a whole to do that. And I'd say the other big piece that we have now coming to the end of our 3-year window after IMI is also this realization that training is not just for the patient community. There is a huge need also for training for all stakeholders out there, and so EUPATI is going to do their best to support training for everyone who wants to be involved in patient engagement in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matthew, for sharing your knowledge and staying with us today. And thank you very much for watching us this morning, either live on or our YouTube channel. This video will be shortly available on our YouTube channel for you to share with your peers and with anyone that could be interested in either applying to the next cohort of EUPATI or getting to know a bit more about patient involvement, patient engagement in R&D. If you haven't subscribed yet to our YouTube channel, please do so. And in order to be updated on any video and new content we will be published. And I wanted to thank, of course, Matthew once more and all the colleagues that made this broadcast possible, Zil and Julien in the backstage, and everyone else in the office for the support and the quietness during this recording. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.
Thank you, and subscribe to EUPATI too.